My sister and I were reborn on the day my parents divorced. This time she took the lead in holding my mother's hand. Mom, take me away. Her voice was filled with suppressed excitement and excitement. Is she trying to take my life away? I laughed, laughing at her naivety. Following my cowardly and incompetent mother, from a stepdaughter who endured humiliation to a successful person, did she think it was easy for me? In my previous life, the last time my sister and I met was at my father's funeral. My husband and I got off the Land Rover, followed by 2 bodyguards, with great pomp. My relatives warmly welcomed me and invited us to sit in the main seat. They surrounded us and flattered us with envy. Someone suddenly said, alas, if June had taken the younger one at that time, who knows who would have gotten this blessing. Speaking of my sister, everyone shook their heads and sighed, saying that she had a bad fate, married a gangster, and divorced in middle age, and her life was over. I subconsciously looked towards the kitchen, and my sister, who was washing dishes, was glaring at me with jealousy, gritting her teeth, and looking unwilling. After the banquet, she took the initiative to find me and said that she had never ridiculed such a good car in her life, and asked me to take her to experience it. Everyone laughed. I couldn't bear her being ridiculed, so I took her for a ride alone. As a result, when we reached a hillside, she suddenly grabbed my steering wheel and laughed wildly and twistedly. Charlie, why are you living better than me? Isn't it because Mom took you to enjoy life? Anyway, I'm dead now, so it's not a loss for you to change, ha ha ha. The car was destroyed and people died. After a burst of severe pain, I fell into darkness. When I opened my eyes again, I was carrying a suitcase and following my mother. I heard my sister's sharp scream, no. Mom, take me away. At this time, her face was flushed and her chest was heaving, as if she had experienced a transformation from great sorrow to great joy in an instant. I understood what was going on in an instant, and my sister was reborn with me. This time, she wants to seize my life. Nonsense. My dad was the first to object and pulled my sister back. I don't want it. Mom, don't you love me the most? I don't want to live a hard life with Dad, you take me, you take me. My sister kicked and hit my dad resentfully, not hiding her disgust. My dad looked at her in disbelief and was stunned on the spot. My sister took the opportunity to break free and hugged my mom tightly, her face covered with tears and snot, and shouted, Mom, I can't bear to be separated from you, woo-woo. My mother was also moved to cry, and my sister wiped her tears, her eyes full of admiration. I looked at this scene coldly, sneering in my heart. Wasn't it her who chose to follow Dad in the first place? My mother disliked my dad for having no money, so she cheated on Jason, a small contractor, and was caught in bed by my dad. From then on, her reputation was ruined, like a rat crossing the street. My sister disliked that she had no source of income after the divorce, while my dad had a small storefront and did some business to have food and clothing. Yeah, it's not that Mom doesn't want to take you, but I don't know what to do in the future? My mother still cruelly rejected my sister, because Jason hadn't agreed to marry her at that time, and she was afraid that her little daughter would suffer. Your sister is older and more sensible, don't be willful. She pushed my sister to my father and said coldly, Harrison, it's agreed that the one who married Yaya is not allowed to remarry. I don't want Yaya to be wronged. I lowered my head and smiled coldly. So, I was willing to take me to remarry and suffer. I don't want it. He can't make money, and he's stupid. Mom, you look down on him, why do you want me to be with him? My sister finally couldn't help cursing. After the words fell, you could hear a pin drop in the house. My father was so angry that his face turned red, and my mother looked embarrassed, but I was not surprised. In the last life, when my mother relied on me to gain a foothold in the Chen family and wear gold and silver, my sister began to look down on my father. Later, when my father was seriously ill in bed, she became even more unscrupulous, beating and scolding my father every day, saying that my father had ruined her life. After decades of mutual resentment, my sister no longer had any father-daughter feelings for him. My sister shook my mother's hand and said coquettishly, Mom, I've said so, he will definitely treat me badly in the future, take me away. My mother looked at her with a complicated expression, sighed, and agreed helplessly. Get out. Get out right now. My father was so angry that he overturned the table and turned into the room, closing the door heavily. My sister didn't care at all. She looked at me provocatively and smiled triumphantly. I followed my sister into the room, watching her happily packing clothes, and asked calmly, Are you really going to the Chen family? Living under someone else's roof is not easy. It was originally a kind word, but she seemed to be stimulated. She suddenly pushed me to the ground and shouted resentfully, Charlie, don't think about snatching Mom. You have enjoyed a lifetime of happiness, this time it's my turn. If you dare to ruin my good deeds, I will kill you. I smiled calmly and stopped persuading her. If you want my life, fine, I will give it to you. I just hope she won't regret it in the future. She suddenly kicked the suitcase away and said disdainfully, Cut, I'm really crazy, why do I bring these junk? The Chen family has plenty of money, I want to buy all new ones. Before leaving, she looked at me proudly. Charlie, Dad has accomplished nothing until the day he died. He only knows how to drink and smash things. You can only wish you good luck. After seeing them off and closing the door, a smile appeared on the corner of my lips. How easy is it for a divorced mother to marry a man with a son with her daughter? Are the Chen family father and son good people? Just like in the previous life, not long after, Jason held a big banquet to marry my mother. Relatives from my grandmother's side attended the banquet and posted photos in the group, praising my mother for her ability and her remarriage. Serena sent me a WeChat message. Sister, I never went to find you in my previous life no matter how poor I was. Don't bother me to live a good life. I replied, okay, why should I go to find them? My good days are just about to begin. I devoted myself to studying. 2 years later, I reached the turning point of my life in my previous life. At that time, I was in the second year of high school and had just become an adult. Jason said, why do girls study so much? Come with me to run engineering projects. My mother dropped me out of school without saying a word and asked me to work hard with him. Now I am still sitting in a bright classroom, enjoying my new life. Charlie, have you heard? It seems that there is a transfer student coming to our class today, and he is coming back from abroad. I said, oh, and shrugged my shoulders without comment. When the head teacher let a tall boy with yellow hair in, my brows frowned. Is it him? Ethan, my stepbrother in my previous life, later became my husband. When Ethan was introducing himself on the stage, a shout came from the corridor outside the door, Serena. What are you doing? You are assigned to another class. I saw that Serena, who I hadn't seen for a long time, also transferred here. At this moment, her eyes were bloodshot, and she looked at me like an enemy. She pointed at Ethan, her mouth opened and closed, silently warning something. I looked away indifferently, lowered my head and smiled slowly. Ethan is back, and Serena's good days are over. During the break, Serena ran to my class and saw that Ethan and I were desk mates. She immediately went crazy. Charlie, do you have any shame? Why are you pestering my brother Ethan? She looked like a wife catching an adulterer. Ethan was watching the show with his legs crossed, holding a pen in his mouth. This attitude made Serena even more arrogant. She swept my books away and stomped on them with her feet. You are so cheap. You want a man while you are still studying. Does he have anything to do with you? Ah. Why do you want to get close to him? I frowned and looked at the books on the ground, feeling distressed. Morgan in the front seat couldn't stand it anymore. Serena Lynn, don't go too far. It's because your sister is a good student that the teacher arranged for the new student to sit next to her. She lives in the same community as me and is very clear about our situation. Who asked you to meddle in other people's business? Remember, call me Serena. I changed my last name a long time ago. Serena snorted coldly, walked to Ethan's side, and took his arm. See, this is my brother. Sister? Does Charlie deserve it? She raised her head to declare her sovereignty, and said to Ethan coquettishly, brother, Charlie is bad. I have nothing to do with her now, you don't have to give her a face. Oh. Ethan just raised his eyelids and glanced at me lazily. Seeing that he was not interested in me, Serena proudly pulled him out. Morgan helped me pick up the books, and angrily scolded, why did she become like this? Snob. You are the only one who can tolerate it. It's okay. I smiled lightly and brushed off the dust on the books. Morgan called me a jerk. Jerk? I have never been. The teacher arranged Ethan to be my desk mate, and I didn't object. Serena provoked, and I silently endured it. All of this was to avoid attracting Ethan's attention and interest. In his previous life, he had a bad habit. The more a woman resisted, the more stubborn, and the more character she had, the more he liked her. Serena was willing to help me divert Ethan's attention, which was something I could not ask for more. Times have changed. My battlefield is no longer in the Chen family. I am in the second year of high school, and I must devote myself to the college entrance examination. Serena did not send Ethan back to the classroom until class started, like a hen protecting her eggs. She was unwilling in her previous life and thought that I could marry Ethan because I was close to him. So in this life, she had already regarded Ethan as her own possession. But she didn't know that the more she did this, the more dangerous her situation in the Chen family would be. 04 Not long after, on the day of physical education class, Serena blocked me in the toilet. She pinched my neck with both hands and asked me without thinking, Charlie, you knew it a long time ago, right? Why didn't you remind me? I glanced at her. The corners of her mouth were purple, and there was a faint red mark on her neck, and there were obvious 5-finger scratches on her wrists. It was a hot day, and she was wearing very tight clothes. Calculating the time, the things in the previous life happened in advance, you know. She denied hurriedly, he was just a hooligan. I believe this. Serena is still half a year away from adulthood. Although Ethan likes to play, he still knows his limits. Serena was furious. Charlie, you deliberately didn't tell me, do you want to laugh at me? I looked at her coldly. Serena, you were married in your previous life, aren't you young and ignorant? Do you need me to remind you? Boys and girls, youth is budding, living under the same roof. She is still pestering Ethan. It would be strange if Ethan didn't feel itchy. Serena looked at me blankly, and suddenly scratched her hair hard, squatting on the ground and muttering in collapse. No, he won't be like this, obviously. Obviously, I squatted down too. Obviously in the last life, you wanted to seduce him, but he didn't say anything and acted like a gentleman, right? She looked up suddenly, horrified. He told me vividly when he came back, and even took a video of you seducing him naked. Serena screamed and yelled at me to stop talking. Tell me, how did you do it? Tell me, or I will kill you. Suddenly, she took out a fruit knife from her pocket and put it against my neck. She looked ruthless and crazy, with bloodshot eyes, as if she would stab me if I didn't agree. As long as you dare to kill him, he won't dare. I said. I'm not kidding. Her eyes narrowed. Charlie, you're crazy. So, you only dare to die with me and threaten me? In the last life, you dared to grab my steering wheel. In this life, you pointed a knife at me. You can only bully me, but because you coveted the Chen family's wealth, you didn't dare to say a word about Ethan's beastly behavior. How can you compare with brother Ethan with your rotten life? I won't admit defeat. If you can do it, I can do it too. Charlie, you wait, I will return all the shame you gave me in your last life to you. Ha ha ha, who told you that you don't have the protection of the Chen family now? My eyes darkened. Now Serena, crazy and stubborn, will definitely use everything she has now to retaliate against me at all costs. Of course, I won't sit there and wait for death. Haha, in this case, Serena, don't blame me for cutting off your retreat. 05 It's time to go home for the monthly break again. I walked back to the community under the moonlight. The shadows of the trees were dim, the wind was sparse, and unknown grass insects were chirping. I looked up and saw my father drying clothes on the balcony. In my previous life, it was also at this time that I was dragged to Ethan's room. The boy pressed me under him and stripped my clothes randomly. I cried desperately and broke free at one point, pounding on my mother's door. Mom, open the door. Save me. Ethan forced me. After a long time, I heard my mother's footsteps approaching, but she persuaded me through the door. Charlie, Ethan was just joking with you, why are you so ignorant? At this time, Ethan came over with a wicked smile and grabbed me. While holding me away, he laughed and talked to my mother. Auntie is still reasonable. Charlie, be obedient and play with your brother. I shouted in panic, Mom! Mom! Come out and see. But until I was dragged into the room by Ethan again, my mother's door did not move at all. Except for my noise, the house was as quiet as a dead person. At that moment, I was heartbroken. Later, I refused to obey, bit Ethan hard and ran away. I ran madly in the rain, and I swore that I would never look back. I cried all the way back to my father's house, and stood downstairs, shouting at him. After my father came down, he not only ignored me, but also scolded me with a fierce face. Didn't you go to Chen's house with your mother to enjoy life? Why did you come back? I hugged myself and stood in the rain shivering. He kept scolding me, you are as cheap as your mother. You are a conscienceless ungrateful wolf, don't come to me in the future. Get out. My father vented his depression and frustration to me unscrupulously, and his indignation at my mother marrying a rich man again. Until my sister's shouting came from upstairs, he stopped scolding and waved his hand to drive me away. Go away quickly, don't let your sister see, otherwise she will be angry, and you don't come back to affect her again. Dad, I was shaking in the rain, and I cried out. I didn't get any mercy from him. My mother's home is not my home, it's hell. My former home can no longer accommodate me. The moment my mother took me away from home, the former family was torn apart, separated by an insurmountable chasm. That night I stood downstairs for a long time until the familiar light on the balcony went out. The last bit of weakness in my heart also disappeared completely. Finally, I wiped away my tears and walked back with firm steps. I knew that from now on, I had to fight my way out by myself. In the early hours of the morning, I took the initiative to enter Ethan's room. When he woke up in a daze, the sharp blade in my hand stabbed straight into his pillow. Ah! He let out a ghostly howl. My stepfather and my mother knocked on the door in less than 3 seconds. I put the tip of the knife against Ethan's neck, slowly revealed a strange smile, and said softly, Mom, Uncle Jason, Ethan and I were just joking. You don't understand what we young people do. If you disturb us, you are very immature. My stepfather kicked the door desperately. I didn't say anything. The knife cut Ethan's flesh and sticky blood flowed out. Then he signaled him to send the people outside the door away. His cold eyes were like looking at a dead person, without any ripples. Dad, I'm fine, you listen to Charlie, let's go. Ethan shouted in fear. Until many years later, when he told me about this incident, he said that I was really scary at that time and he was really scared by me. But he will never know that if he dared to resist that night, I would definitely die with him. Serena chose to swallow her anger when she was humiliated for the first time, which meant that she would never have the opportunity to resist again. When I got home, my dad asked me about my studies and happily went to the kitchen to make me a midnight snack. Dad, make more. I have an appointment with Morgan to review. Okay. He smiled, not at all unhappy. Since being backstabbed by Serena, he has put all his love on me. One day, he got drunk and hugged me and said, "Charlie, don't envy your sister. Although Dad has no money, I will definitely give you the best. Dad will definitely train you well. Let those mother and daughter regret it." Thank you, Dad. I thanked him sincerely, but my emotions were calm. Serena and I are just tools for my parents to play games. After the midnight snack was ready, I called Morgan. "Call Auntie over, my dad is a great cook." Morgan hesitated for a while. "This isn't a good idea." I turned on the speaker. "Why not? If Auntie is embarrassed, just wash the dishes after eating, Dad, right?" My dad rubbed his hands and could only say, "Sister Jiang, come over, we're neighbors, don't be polite." After the midnight snack, Morgan and I went to the room to do homework. "Auntie Wendy, we only need to review for an hour, you can watch TV and go back with Morgan later." After saying that, without waiting for her to respond, he pulled Morgan into the room. Coming out of Teacher Hope's office, Serena brought people to stop me. Since she had money, she bought a group of followers and was very popular in school. A group of people surrounded me and walked to the back door of the school. I frowned. "Serena, what do you want to do?" She sneered. Had someone restrained my limbs, slowly took out a pair of scissors from her pocket, gestured on my face, with a vicious smile on her lips. "Charlie, although Ethan doesn't like you, I feel uncomfortable seeing you always hanging around him. Don't you like studying? Who are you tempting with long hair? I'll help you trim it." As soon as she finished speaking, the scissors rushed towards my face, only a few centimeters away from my eyes. Seeing me shrink back, she laughed triumphantly, grabbed my hair unexpectedly, and cut it randomly. I didn't struggle, quietly watching the black silk fall in front of my eyes. "All right." Serena took a breath, admiring her masterpiece. There were bursts of laughter from the side, saying that I looked like a bald frog now. Teacher Hope ran over and shouted, "What are you doing?" A group of followers scattered at the news, but Serena put away the scissors without hesitation and glanced at Teacher Hope. "We are just joking, teacher, it's so loud that it scares people." Teacher Hope pointed at my head and yelled, "Are you joking? Go call your parents." "Parents?" Serena pointed at me and laughed and coughed. "Teacher Hope, do you want to ask Charlie if she dares to call her parents?" She turned away contemptuously, leaving a sentence, "If she really calls them, it's not certain who she will help." "You one by one." I gently pulled Teacher Hope's sleeve and shook my head. "Forget it." Facing Teacher Hope's pitying eyes, I smiled and said, "Today I have the good news you brought me, this little thing is nothing. This is just the starting point of my life. Some people, too." I touched the wound on my head, it hurt, but at the same time, I felt great. Seeing someone going crazy in the mud instead of me and not being able to get rid of it, what is this little pain? In the last year of high school, every minute and every second is precious. Serena is not worthy of my torment. The hair can still grow, but Serena will soon be no longer glorious. Charlie, the suffering will always pass, just endure it a little longer, and you will be free. Teacher Hope touched my head with pity. I held the broken hair in my hand and suddenly said, "Teacher, can you keep the admission confidential for me?" With the trouble Serena had just caused me, he patted his chest and promised to help me discuss it with the school leaders. I was a conspicuous bag in school for a few days with my bald head, and the school leaders agreed to my request and approved it for me. In the final list of admissions, my name Charlie was not on it. In the crowd, Serena breathed a sigh of relief, and a calculation flashed in her eyes. Morgan pulled me out disappointedly, and she suddenly asked, "Charlie, Serena bullied you that day, and I wanted to call for help, why did you stop me?" I smiled faintly. "She is just a child, and it will be over after a little trouble. She won't really hurt me. TSK, you still treat her as a sister." I put my arm around her shoulders. "Let's not talk about her. Why do I feel that Aunt Wendy has become much more beautiful recently?" Morgan suddenly hesitated and scratched her head. No. I didn't ask any more questions, and the two of us walked towards the classroom while playing. I in the corridor, Serena took Ethan's arm, and the two of them talked intimately. Ethan's hand rubbed her waist from time to time, and the two of them were extremely ambiguous in their words and deeds. Morgan sighed and whispered, "Many people in the school say that they are in love, but Ethan is chasing the class flower in the next class. Anyway, I don't think they are siblings. Seeing how harmonious they get along, Serena must have let go of her status and reached some unequal treaties. She thought she was just letting Ethan enjoy some husband's rights in advance. But to be the daughter-in-law of the Chen family, beauty and good behavior are far from enough. Once Ethan really succeeds, Serena's value will be over. The next challenge cannot be solved by letting others take advantage of her. 07 The second semester of the third year of high school is the time when everyone is sprinting. Serena in the second year of high school suddenly wants to drop out of school, and my mother came to handle it personally. Her pointed index finger pointed at Serena's forehead unceremoniously. Why are you crying? Your academic performance is so poor, it's a waste of time to study again. Seeing the teacher's disapproving eyes, the classmates talked about it. She raised her head proudly. What are you looking at? My Serena is different from you. My family has a company. After you go to college, don't you have to work in the company? I laughed. My mother has not changed. She likes Serena, but loves herself more. In the last life, I could help her, so she consciously kept a distance from Serena for fear that I would be angry. The deep love between mother and daughter has long become a joke. Dropping out of school is a shameful thing after all. Serena was unwilling to accept it and looked at Ethan with tears in her eyes. Ethan turned his face away and said lazily, Why are you looking at me? Tell my dad if you have something to say. The Chen family's company had already encountered big problems at this time. Jason was nodding and bowing outside every day, begging for favors and socializing, hoping to make some money so that he could change his career. Serena saw that there was no room for maneuver in the matter of dropping out of school, and suddenly rushed towards me in the crowd and pushed me hard. Charlie, I can't get into college, and you can't even think about it. Teacher Hope quickly supported me and scolded me for being uneducated. My mother was embarrassed and quickly took the crying Serena away. I couldn't help sighing as I looked at their backs. In the previous life, Serena passed the second-tier college exam with my father's company. My father was so happy that he held a big banquet. He spread it among relatives and also took the opportunity to step on my dropping out of high school. She mocked my mother, saying that both mother and daughter were uneducated and that my life was ruined by my mother. The family group kept playing videos, with flowers and cannons saluting, and everyone was praising Serena for her promising future. Relatives even openly belittled me, saying that in this era, I didn't even have a college degree, which was shameful. That was the darkest moment of my life. No one knew that I drank so much that day that I vomited blood and was lying in the ward after surgery. When the anesthetic wore off, I was convulsed with pain. It was hard enough to receive the news that Serena was admitted to a second-tier university. Ethan was still sitting next to me and mocking me. Charlie, I asked you to use a knife on me. I can't cure you, but can my dad and aunt cure you? I won't let you go to college and leave me. You've seen my embarrassing side, so you should just be my woman. Hee. My dad said you have blood and are a good material for business. The company can't do without you now. That's fine. I don't like dealing with those rough guys in the construction industry. It's just right for you to do it. Get lost. I glared at him resentfully. He jumped away and pushed me back to the bed. You drank so much that your stomach bled, you know that? You're still making trouble. If I hadn't saved you last night, you would have died. I stared at him numbly. He confronted me for a while and spread his hands helplessly. Okay, it's my fault. I shouldn't have provoked you. You are just too stubborn. I always want to teach you a lesson. He narrowed his peach blossom eyes and came closer. Charlie, this deal is done, marry me. I really like you. We are the east wind and the west wind. One of us has to bow his head. I admit defeat, okay? I closed my eyes and let him nag. I have a mother who holds me back. If I don't want to be controlled by the father and son of the Chen family, I can only make achievements in the company and get the right to speak. Otherwise, I can only watch them expel me from school and play with my life like in the second year of high school. Serena doesn't understand. She envied me when I was enjoying a good life in the Chen family. I envied my father for not remarrying for her. He was afraid that she would be wronged, so he took good care of her and fulfilled her dream, and I, in one social gathering after another, one glass of liquor after another, and one flattery after another, mourned my regretful and lonely life. Now, Serena, I am as you wish. This overwhelming wealth is for you to enjoy. But can you really grasp it? 08 On the eve of the college entrance examination, I met Serena again. At my home, my father was stiff-necked and blushing, telling her to get out, and Aunt Wendy was persuading him beside him. Look at what you are wearing. How does your mother control you? Serena crossed her legs, smoked and puffed, and her face was full of impatience. You control me. I didn't follow you. Then why did you come back? Get out. Dad, I just miss you and come back to stay for a few days. If you really want me to get out, then I will really get out. Serena shook her legs fearlessly. My father was so angry that he fell backwards, cursed a few words, and went back to his room alone to sulk. I took off my shoes and walked in, put down my school bag, and thought of that rainy night, feeling indifferent. Although he was loud and sharp-tongued just now, he was still worried that Serena would learn bad things. Even though Serena looked down on him so much, he still couldn't bear to see his little daughter leave. If she really didn't welcome him and didn't want to see him, she should have been treated like she did to me in the last life and didn't give her a chance to come in. Angry? Not really. Just a little bit, haha, that's all. Hey, Charlie, Dad said you haven't been home for a month. What have you been doing? Serena stared at me warily. I replied indifferently, didn't Dad say that? I went to summer camp to relax. My dad opened the door and came out, saying loudly, your sister has good grades, so she doesn't need to cram like others. At such a young age, you don't study and go to a company drinking, aren't you ashamed? The father and daughter quarreled again, and I stuffed cotton in my ears and lay down on the bed. There was only 1 week left before the college entrance examination. Serena worked at Chen's company during the day and came home to sleep at night. She often came home in the middle of the night and vomited all over the place. My dad got up and scolded her to make her sober soup. Aunt Wendy reminded him to let Serena be careful and not affect my review, but the house was even more lively at night. In addition to the noise of Serena coming home late, there was also the sound of my dad arguing with my mom on the phone. Morgan whispered to me that Serena wanted to interfere with my studies under the guise of visiting my dad. I shook my head and said, no way? After all, they haven't seen each other for several years, so it's reasonable to have a small gathering. Morgan couldn't do anything with me, so she could only ask me to go to her house to review. From beginning to end, I didn't complain at all. The night before the college entrance examination, Serena sneaked into my room and said she wanted to talk to me. Charlie, why did you never come home in your last life? Did your dad not let you come back? Oh, I never thought that after several years, my dad still kept my room. She patted my bed and smiled proudly, but after you left, this room was changed into my study. Charlie, how did you get along so well with your dad in this life? Don't you hate him? She stretched out her finger and stroked the ring on her middle finger, her eyes full of longing. Do you know? My stepfather said that if I can get a few more business deals, he will let me marry brother Ethan. Oh, brother Ethan is my brother-in-law in my last life, your husband, which is embarrassing. I sneered in my heart. Get a few business deals? Rely on her dusty smell? A few tricks of seduction to please people with beauty? She took the flattering words of the Chen family father and son seriously. Don't be embarrassed. I wish you a long and happy life together. Serena patted her chest and laughed, and said happily, Charlie, it turns out that your life in your previous life was all an illusion. I thought you and brother Ethan had a good relationship, but it turns out that it's just like this. Otherwise, how could you bear to give him to me? She smiled proudly, lowered her head and touched her belly. I have good news to tell you. I'm pregnant with brother Ethan's child. Sister, it seems that you didn't give birth in your previous life? She said confidently, don't even think about marrying into the Chen family in this life. The company, money, and men are all mine. I have taken back everything you had in your previous life. Then I really have to congratulate you. I said. Serena's attack was like hitting cotton. She said everything she said, but in the end, she returned in vain. The heavy rain continued until 10 o'clock in the evening. Under the raging wind, the city was dazzling because of the chaos day and night. I was eating fruit while
At this moment his heart seethed with hatred for Chen Xian. Just wait, today's incident won't end here, Wang Hao thought coldly. Chen Xian, your arrogance won't.
While waiting to enter the examination room, Aunt Wendy urged Morgan to check the examination documents and stationery again. At this time, my dad screamed, ah! We all looked at him, and saw him shaking my information bag desperately, muttering, it's gone, where are the things inside? Aunt Wendy was horrified. This is not a joke, the bell is about to ring, aren't you afraid that the child can't keep an eye on it, so you have to take it yourself? My dad's face was pale, his lips trembled, and he kept saying, yes, yes, I have been holding it. I held it tightly all the way, and I checked it before leaving. Morgan was anxious. Uncle Harrison, think about it, who else has touched the information bag? My dad thought for a while, and suddenly slapped his head, his face full of shock. Yeah. But it's impossible. Aunt Wendy stamped her feet in anger. Hey, Lao Lin, this is related to the child's life, why are you so careless? Everyone was panicked. My dad muttered in a panic, I just let Yaya touch it before leaving. I checked the bags and they are the same. At this time, the bell rang, and Aunt Wendy couldn't care less, and hurriedly took Morgan into the examination room. My dad could only take me to find the teacher. But all the documents were lost, and the teacher had no time to negotiate and explain. It was half an hour later when I entered the examination room, and this subject was basically ruined. My dad desperately called Serena and shouted that he would beat her to death. Serena's arrogant laughter came from the phone. Charlie, are you surprised? Are you surprised? Do you think I only have the tricks I used last night? Haha, that was just what I used to confuse you. I hate you the most for pretending to be noble in front of me, and privately you have been waiting to see my good show, despise me, and look down on me. You pretend to swallow your anger, just because you think that you have been admitted to college, you are great, and you have to start a new life. I tell you, you are not destined to go to college. Have I allowed you to live my life? You will never be better than me in your life. Perhaps because her goal was achieved, she no longer had any scruples. My dad asked tremblingly, Serena, I ask you, you came back this time just to make your sister unable to take the college entrance examination? That's right, old man. Do you really think I came back to reminisce with you? You two rats in the gutter, struggle well. You damn thing, you are not a human, you hurt your sister so much, get back here. Ha ha ha, I have good news for you, my family is all in Shanghai, and we will go abroad to settle down tomorrow. You guys, wish you good luck, bye. The phone was hung up. No matter how many times my dad called, there was no sound. Even my mother's mobile phone was turned off. All relatives couldn't contact them. My dad seemed to have aged dozens of years in an instant, and he stumbled to the ground. I silently helped him up. He burst into tears and watched me slap myself nonstop. Daughter, Dad is sorry for you, sorry for you. Dad deserves death, Dad has ruined your life. He beat his chest and stamped his feet. I watched Teacher Hope walking towards us from a distance, and hurriedly helped my dad walk away. Regret? Ashamed? Isn't this what you deserve? My dad fell ill when he got home and lay in bed unable to get up. It was one thing that prevented me from taking the exam, but the bigger blow was probably from Serena's use and betrayal. He opened his eyes in a daze and kept muttering, Charlie, I'm sorry, Dad was wrong, Dad will treat you well in the future. Aunt Wendy called me out of the room, her face full of heartache. Charlie, it's been 3 days, tell him the truth. Otherwise, I'm afraid he won't be able to make it. I lowered my head and said nothing. Aunt Wendy promised again, I can guarantee for Lao Lin this time. He will never be soft-hearted towards Serena again. I smiled at her, guarantee is useless. If Aunt Wendy marries my dad and gives birth to a little brother, then I will believe it. Aunt Wendy blushed with shame and hit me. Oh, you kid, I'm talking to you about business. Isn't this business? I asked with my head tilted. Morgan came over speechlessly. Charlie, stop teasing my mom. We haven't settled accounts with you yet. She grabbed my ear. You secretly recommended me and didn't tell us. You're so bold. I didn't do well in the exam. I cried out in pain. Aunt Wendy and her daughter burst out laughing. 09 After my dad woke up, he didn't blame me for lying to him. First, he announced in various family groups that he had officially severed ties with Serena, and everything about her would have nothing to do with him in the future. He only has me, Charlie, as his daughter. Relatives from my grandmother's side scolded sourly. Harrison, what are you announcing? It was Serena who said that we should sever ties. They have gone abroad to live happily. What about you? You can only shout in the group chat. An incompetent man cannot keep his wife and children. He deserves it. My father was so angry that he directly quit the group chat. Charlie, Dad is useless. I can't help you get back what you have suffered. I said indifferently, forget it, I didn't lose anything. This is a vicious heart. If you hadn't been smart and applied for the recommendation first, Dad would have died with his eyes wide open. This child has a bad heart and is hopeless. He even schemed against his own sister. He was always aggrieved about being betrayed by his youngest daughter, and dragged me to complain and scold for dozens of minutes. Seeing that I was indifferent, he seemed to understand something and stopped talking. Child, I looked at him quietly, and he stammered a few times, sighed, and turned into the house. I walked to the balcony and looked downstairs. It was pitch black and I couldn't see anything clearly. I could feel my dad's recent compensation and guilt, but what's the use? A palm leaf fan in winter and a long coat in summer. After all, it comes at the wrong time and only makes people bored. Morgan once asked me privately why I wanted to match her mom and my dad. Who wants to have a stepmother? I don't like having a stepfather either. I smiled and replied, we are going to college in another city. Isn't it good for the 2 old people to take care of each other? She rolled her eyes and accepted this explanation. In fact, I have always known that I am not Serena, and my father will not stay single for my whole life. In this case, why not find a partner for him to save him from disliking each other in the future and losing face? Of course, there is another reason. I want to cut off Serena's retreat. As a person, you can't always eat what's in the bowl and look at what's in the pot. On the day we received the admission letter, we finally got news from the Chen family. It turned out that Jason and his son took away all the company's funds and fled abroad, leaving debts and a mess to my mother and Serena. Until the creditors came to the door, the mother and daughter were still dreaming of going abroad to enjoy the good life and eat delicious food. My mother is now under surveillance in the Chen family villa and has no freedom at all. When the court verdict comes out, she has no place to live and can only live on the streets. Serena had a miscarriage and heavy bleeding during the escape, and is currently receiving treatment in the hospital. I am still in the family group of my grandmother's house. My mother sent messages frantically, hoping that someone would take her in after the house was executed, but all relatives avoided her. It is said that Jason left a debt of more than 60 million, and the Chen family villa is far from enough to pay it off. Those creditors can't find Jason and his son, so they will just keep harassing my mother. I really regret it. I should have brought Charlie with me at the beginning. Serena was spoiled by me. I asked her to help Jason, and she bankrupted a good company. My mother still can't recognize the reality and tries to whitewash the situation. My aunt is outspoken and directly retorted, you should do some good deeds. You let your daughter sell her body, and you still defend that scumbag. My second aunt also said, if it weren't for Serena, could the Chen family get back so much money? They saw that the company was failing, so they used you to run away. My mother was so angry that she sent a voice message to curse, you guys should keep your mouths clean. Serena is pregnant with my stepson's child, and the two are going to get married. You know nothing. My aunt is not easy to bully, and she sent a voice message to curse, June, are you blind? Serena's dress, speech, and appearance in the past 6 months are like a prostitute. I don't know how many men she has slept with. You bitch, you don't know how to judge people, and you ruined Serena's life. If I were you, I would jump into the river and drown. My second aunt sent a bunch of exclamation marks and announced, I'm putting this on hold, June, if you dare to step into my house, I'll break your legs. Why are you pretending to be dead, second uncle? Come out and speak. The group was filled with chaos, and I quietly left. After booking the flight to Beijing, Serena asked me to meet her. She is still recuperating in the hospital, looking sick and as if she has lost half her life. I thought she would wake up, but as soon as we met, she asked me frantically, Charlie, explain it to me. Why is the Chen family different from the previous life? Didn't they become very rich later? Tell me. I stood in front of the bed and looked down at her, because they have me. She didn't believe it and shook her head desperately, impossible, I tried hard. I drink a lot, and those bosses like me. I got a lot of money back. I looked at her with pity, use your body? Brother Ethan said he didn't care. He has been abroad. As long as there is money, he will take me to live a good life. We went abroad and didn't know anyone. Serena suddenly laughed and pointed at me and said, you were like this in your previous life, right? No wonder you can't have children. You were also played by others, right? I sat leisurely by the bed and told her a fact. Do you know why I married Ethan? Serena looked at me with burning eyes. I was molested at the table, and he fought for me. Impossible, she shouted. Later, he injured his vitals, ordered Jason to hand over the company to me, and then prepared to jump off the building to commit suicide. Charlie, you are lying. Brother Ethan doesn't care about anyone, he is not that kind of person. My eyes darkened. Yes, I know he is just playing, but he dares. That day, he was hanging his feet in the air on the high building, facing the wind and said quietly, Charlie, I can probably understand how you felt when you stabbed the knife into my pillow that night. I ask you, are you trying to scare me, or do you really dare to kill me? I answered, if you dare to resist, I will. He turned around and smiled at me, if you leave me, I will really jump. We are all betting on the fate of the future. That night, I won the bet. This time, he won the bet. The beginning of Ethan and I was destined to be a fight between us, evenly matched. But Serena positioned herself in the position of being played from the beginning. Serena, do you still think that I rely on my mother and Ethan? My life does not rely on choices, and I have never had the right to choose. No matter what path is given to me, I can only rely on the courage and effort to break out of the darkness. Serena does not understand that it is never life that fails, but people. 77 I don't know if Serena has let go of her obsession in her previous life. That is no longer my business. Before Morgan and I set off, we witnessed the wedding of my father and Aunt Wendy. The newlyweds will start a new life with the blessings of their daughters. At the banquet, Aunt Wendy actually felt sick. An old Chinese doctor was present among the relatives, and he found out that she was pregnant after taking her pulse. My father was overjoyed and danced with joy. When the family returned home happily, they saw Serena squatting at the door with a suitcase. Seeing my father carefully helping Aunt Wendy out of the elevator, he kept telling her to be careful. Serena was stunned for a moment, and then screamed, Dad, who allowed you to get married? My dad didn't even look at her, and said in a cold tone, get lost. He didn't even bother to say a word or a look to her. Serena's face turned pale, and she was full of disbelief. She opened her arms to block my dad and said anxiously, Dad, look carefully, I am Yaya, your Yaya, are you crazy? Why get married at such an old age? Didn't you say that whoever takes care of me can't get married? My dad frowned. Everyone looked at Serena in confusion, and Aunt Wendy asked in a hoarse voice, is this child mentally ill? After a series of setbacks, Serena may really not be able to distinguish between her past life and this life. She has nothing now, and the only thing she can rely on is the fatherly love that she despised in her previous life. She has always been strong, and she can't accept that her father, who has never married for her, has a new wife and a beloved son. I've ended my relationship with you a long time ago. If you have any problems, go find your mom. My dad glanced at her indifferently, helped Aunt Wendy walk away, and then motioned me to close the door quickly. I don't believe it, Dad, you won't abandon me. I was wrong, Dad. Serena's screams echoed outside the corridor. That night, my dad was heartless and let her scream until the early morning without opening the door. It was only after the neighbors called the police that Serena was taken away. I thought this was the ending after I exchanged lives with Serena. Unexpectedly, she still didn't let me go. During the summer vacation of my freshman year in college, I was entangled by a strange man in the alley on my way home. I pretended to deal with him, and ran out of the alley to call for help and call the police while he was touching me. With the help of the people around, the police successfully arrested the man. It took almost no effort for the man to confess that it was Serena who instigated him to do it, saying that he knew I was Serena's sister. He didn't commit a crime, and we were willing. It was just that his family forced him to get married, and I refused on the grounds that I had to go to college, so he had no choice but to come up with a method that made it a done deal. The man was able to produce the letters we exchanged, as well as photos and my identity information. I said that these were all stolen by Serena, and the police immediately caught Serena to confront her. When I saw her, she was already crazy and unconscious. However, she could still recognize me. She pointed at me and laughed. "Charlie, your man bullied me, so I let my man bully you, that's fair." It turned out that this man was her gangster husband in her previous life. I asked the police to follow the procedures. The gangster was jailed, Serena was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and has been sent to a special place for control. As for Jason and his son, Interpol replied to me that they have been trying their best to hunt them down across the country. But the two were very cunning and have now hidden in the politically chaotic Eastern Triangle. They are still negotiating with all their strength. I said I knew. They have been scheming in this life, and it is only natural that they have ended up like this. And my beautiful life without any more burdens has just begun. Extra 6 years later. Morgan, as Charlie's secretary, went with her to the Haicheng Mental Hospital. Serena was just transferred from the mental hospital today. Because of her aggressiveness, she was locked in an iron room. Charlie. Haha, Charlie. Switch with me. Switch with me. I want to choose again. Go to hell. I'm going to kill you, kill you. The iron fence was shaken by Serena, and she grinned, her eyes were bloodshot and full of desire, and she smiled twistedly. Why did Serena become like a mad dog? Morgan took a step back and blurted out. Hasn't she always been a mad dog? Charlie replied calmly, with a mocking smile at the corner of his mouth, which was sinister. Morgan couldn't help but shudder. Money is not a problem. Medicines and equipment can be used without mercy. Charlie explained to the dean next to him, and his cold tone made the dean look stern. Yes, Mr. Lin. He said immediately. From this moment on, Serena's life completely ended with Charlie, and she could no longer stir up any waves. After leaving the mental hospital, Morgan couldn't help but wonder, how did Serena get to where she is today? First, she fell in love with the wrong person. After dropping out of school, Serena got entangled with Ethan, and then she was abandoned when she got pregnant, and then she became mentally ill. That man has been doing well in the East Triangle in recent years, committing many crimes, and has long been on the domestic wanted list. Could it be that Charlie had already seen that Ethan was a tough guy? She had been using Serena as a shield to hide her strength? Morgan's heart trembled. No, 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 Charlie was only 18 years old at that time. How could she have predicted the current situation? Morgan quickly shook his head to deny. The car left the mental hospital, and she looked away with a sigh. The man Serena found was unreliable, and Aunt June sat behind her, and she was rejected by Uncle Harrison. Every way out seemed to be blocked. Morgan remembered that Uncle Harrison and Aunt Wong had favored Serena since she was a child, which could be seen from their names. My mother told me that when the couple divorced, they fought over the custody of Serena, and Charlie was kicked around like a ball. Finally, Uncle Harrison slammed the table and yelled that he was willing to stay single for the sake of Serena, and Aunt Wong compromised. Although Serena eventually followed Aunt Wong to the Chen family, Uncle Harrison's preference for her was obvious. It was not until Serena ruined Charlie's college entrance examination that Uncle Harrison cruelly severed the father-daughter relationship. Although this matter was reasonable, Morgan thought of a question. Charlie had already obtained the recommendation quota. Why did Charlie keep it secret from everyone? Even she didn't see Charlie's okay gesture to her until the moment before entering the examination room. Did Charlie predict that Serena would do this? Ah! Morgan almost cried out. Thinking of recommendation, she suddenly remembered something. That year, Serena had someone tie Charlie up at the back door of the school to bully him. Charlie had his hair cut into bald hair, which became a joke. Ethan disliked her ugliness and even changed his seat. That day, Charlie went to Teacher Hope to ask about the result of the recommendation quota. When she was about to call for help, Charlie suddenly glanced at her, with a gloomy look with a warning and inexplicable cruelty. She couldn't help but swallow her cry for help. It was not until after graduating from college that Morgan became Charlie's right-hand man after several years of social experience. Only then did she realize that Charlie's glance was a deterrent that only people who have been in a high position for a long time can have. And I was simply ignorant and fearless back then, and I even questioned Charlie why he indulged Serena so much. Charlie shook his head and smiled helplessly. It's okay, she just has a childish temper, she's just making a fuss, she won't really hurt me. How can this be a fuss? From then on, Charlie had already thought of using the recommendation quota to calculate Serenon Lurharanto trap. She concealed the news of the recommendation because she was waiting for Serena to make a fuss about the college entrance examination and make Uncle Harrison regret it. She completely saw through Serena's character. This explains very well that Serena blatantly provoked her on the eve of the college entrance examination. She and her mother could see that Serena had bad intentions. But Charlie never complained, just smiled and said that Serena had no bad intentions. Serena just wanted to connect with Uncle Harrison. Morgan looked at Charlie with complicated eyes, opened her lips, and took back her words. She actually wanted to ask if Charlie's matchmaking between her mother and Uncle Harrison was also premeditated. She was afraid that Uncle Harrison would be soft-hearted again in the future, so she simply let him get married and have children, completely cutting off Serena's way back. The answer was actually in her heart. Charlie's every step and every word were targeted. So, how could she, such a smart person, not see Serena's low-level provocations? How could she trust Uncle Harrison with such an important document as the college entrance examination, especially when Serena was there? How could she not know that the document had to be checked until the bell rang and her mother reminded her to enter the examination room? Charlie never tolerated or gave in. She just watched Uncle Harrison favor Serena with a cold eye. She indulged Serena on the road to madness with a cold eye. Because she knew that only when they were praised higher would they fall harder. Morgan later heard from her mother that Uncle Harrison received a call from Serena after she entered the examination room. Hearing Serena arrogantly admit that it was her who did it, Uncle Harrison fell down on the spot in anger. Charlie is a hard-hearted child, he didn't even blink. If I hadn't helped him up, your Uncle Harrison would definitely be in trouble after falling. But they didn't think deeply at the time. After all, the college entrance examination is related to a person's life. Who wouldn't be angry if it was ruined by someone? He might even kill someone. Uncle Harrison had been lying in bed for 3 days, with a high fever that made him confused and talking nonsense all the time. The doctors said it was a mental illness and he needed to be cured slowly. Her mother knew that Charlie had been admitted to the hospital, so she dared to plead for him. Charlie took advantage of this incident to make her mother and Uncle Harrison's relationship take a big step forward. What's wrong? You are very quiet today. Are you provoked by Serena? Charlie suddenly opened his eyes and asked with a smile. Morgan shook her head quickly. No, Serena deserves it. Charlie smiled and tilted her head to look at the scenery outside the window. Morgan sighed softly. Although she figured out the whole story, she couldn't blame Charlie. If there is no desire, why ask? If she hadn't been admitted to the hospital, if she still had expectations and trust in Uncle Harrison, what would have been waiting for Charlie that day? Think about it more deeply. If he hadn't concealed the fact that he was recommended, the Chen family was rich and powerful at that time, and who knows what Serena would do. Charlie just cooperated with Serena and let her succeed. The more proud Serena was at that time, the more crazy she became later, but Morgan still felt a little disappointed in his heart. Charlie said this about bringing her mom and Uncle Harrison together. We're going to college in another city, let my dad and Aunt Wendy take care of each other, isn't that good? Even though they were good friends and now stepsisters, Charlie never told her the truth. Behind those indifferent smiles and perfunctory words, there was a heart that was extremely cold. She fought alone and didn't need anyone's understanding and sympathy. She was so arrogant that she made people feel pitiful. All the way, Morgan's mood was ups and downs. When she arrived at the Lin family, she was already a little more afraid of Charlie. Hee, sister is back. As soon as the doorbell rang, her younger brother Leo ran out and jumped on Charlie like a monkey. Hey. Leo, you, Morgan subconsciously reached out. Humph. Leo didn't care. Charlie smiled, handed the bag to Morgan, and picked up Leo. Leo giggled triumphantly, and kissed Charlie on the cheek with his wet mouth. It was very loud. Charlie is back. Harrison wiped his hands on his apron and walked quickly from the kitchen. Today, we cooked all your favorite dishes. Wash your hands and eat, Leo, don't bother your sister. He stretched out his hands to take Leo away. No hurry. Charlie said lightly, and turned aside to avoid Harrison. Morgan was a little embarrassed. Harrison followed behind helplessly, his eyes lingering on Charlie, trying to get close to talk, but was blocked by Charlie. Wendy shook her head helplessly at Morgan and sighed. 6 years have passed, and the relationship between father and daughter has not improved, but has become increasingly distant. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that Harrison has been trying to break the deadlock. But Charlie has always been indifferent. No wonder, no blame, people don't even have a chance to speak. This is the most powerless. In the end, the mother and daughter could only admit that Charlie had let it go long ago. Only Harrison still held on to his obsession and was worried. Charlie didn't come to the dinner table until he finished checking Leo's homework. Only when facing Leo, the smile on her face was somewhat warm. 10 years later, Harrison was seriously ill, and Wendy called Charlie to go back to see him for the last time. Charlie, your father is most worried about you, this time, have a good talk with him. Wendy advised earnestly. The mother and daughter stayed outside the ward, waiting anxiously. A few minutes passed, and there was silence inside, and suddenly, if it was me who left with my mother that year, what would you do? Would you keep my room after many years like Serena, or would you not allow me to go home and quickly eliminate my traces in this family? Dee Dee, the instrument called out quickly, and Morgan looked out the window. Harrison's face was flushed, his upper body leaned up hard, and his eyes widened. Dej, no. Charlie then said, if you really love me, why would you marry Aunt Wendy? Xiao Manyun and Wendy looked at each other, their eyes full of worry and embarrassment. When you decided to take Serena, didn't you swear that you would not remarry? Harrison stared at Charlie closely, opened his mouth, but was speechless. Dad, true love will subconsciously think about what she wants, and take care of everything without missing anything. So you have tried to be nice to me for so many years, so hard, so humble, do you know how ridiculous I think it is? Charlie leaned down and whispered to Harrison, you really look like a clown. Charlie, how can she be so cruel? Her father is going to die. Wendy was so angry that she wanted to rush into the ward. Morgan hugged her tightly, tears rolling down her cheeks. Mom, let her vent, otherwise, she won't have a chance. Wendy stared at her daughter in a daze. Charlie, she has endured for a long time, this is what Uncle Harrison owes her. It's not easy for Charlie to get to where she is today. Every step, as long as she is a little soft-hearted, a little wrong step, it will be a bottomless abyss, there is no way back. Uncle Harrison has been partial since childhood, and he pushed Charlie to Aunt Wong when he divorced, which means he abandoned her once. Before the college entrance examination, for Serena, did he really care about Charlie's studies? During that time, Serena was at home, and we all know how chaotic it was. Just like Charlie said, love is not as simple as cooking a few meals for her and saying a few words of greeting. It is to say and do from the heart. But what did Charlie's tolerance get in return? Serena stole her ID recklessly. If Uncle Harrison had paid more attention, she would not have been calculated. Until the moment the bell rang, it was finally irreversible. Do you know how painful and cold Charlie's heart was? Harrison finally failed Charlie's last expectation. Charlie actually gave him a chance. Harrison's guilt and goodwill were just compensation and regret after being backstabbed by Serena. The proud Charlie disdained this belated and cheap fatherly love. It was Harrison who took away Charlie's lover's heart. What qualifications does he have to ask for her forgiveness now? There is no reason for the partiality of parents. Charlie just accepted this fact a long time ago. Harrison did not get Charlie's forgiveness until the moment of his death. Charlie came out of the ward, her expression had returned to normal, she picked up Leo. Sister, where is Dad? Charlie touched his head, he went to a very far place. Leo, don't be afraid, sister will always be with you. Leo nodded ignorantly. Yang, you are my only relative, you will have everything I have. Leo burst into tears, I don't want it, Yang only wants sister. Charlie smiled, holding Leo and walked towards the mother and daughter. Auntie, don't worry, I will take care of you in the future. Wendy wiped her tears and said firmly, Charlie, I don't need you to take care of me in the old age. Your father said before that I should follow you and not let you be alone. If you don't forgive him, then Auntie will continue to atone for his sins. Charlie raised his eyebrows and did not comment. Morgan thought as she looked at her back holding Leo and left. Perhaps, only Leo is the only family member Charlie recognizes and trusts. With Leo, they will always become a real family. Charlie, Morgan smiled, she was the one who brought you and Uncle Harrison together, so let's follow her. Don't let her blame me. Several years later, the company grew bigger and bigger under the joint management of Charlie and Morgan. The two never married and took care of Wendy together. When Leo graduated from college at the age of 23, Charlie officially handed over the company to him. After Leo got a firm position, the two retired and traveled around the world to enjoy life. It is said that after the plane took off, Leo pointed to the sky and cursed his two sisters for not caring about his life. This scene became a joke for the employees of the Lin Group for a long time and was talked about with relish. With a successor, the sisters' beautiful life has just begun.